pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please silence your cell phones so we don't have to hear silly rings? You can keep it on mute and it will vibrate maybe. Thank you. Would you like to call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson. Here. Mr. Burrows. Here. Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Delaney.
Here.
Ms. Nichols. Here. All present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in your packet, we received the planning board meeting minutes from October 7th, 2024. I look to our secretary, Mr. Burrows. Have you had a chance to review them?
Yes, I reviewed the minutes, and as hard as I could try, I could not find anything amiss. But if anybody else found anything, I'd be interested to see what they found.
Mr. Burrows, anyone else? I do concur. They are meticulous. Nina must have an exceptional hearing, or she's watched the video several times because I commend her. Excellent. Could I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
I move that we approve the planning board meeting minutes of October 7th, 2024, as written.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
I will
Ms.
second
Nichols,
that.
thank you. I didn't hear anyone have any exceptions. All set, ready to go? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Moving along in our agenda, Chairman's report. I have nothing to mention. Nothing to mention this evening. I'm looking forward to committee reports. Ordinance Review Committee, Mr. Walsh.
The ordinance committee has not met since we met last.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, Mr. Frank.
We have not met.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank. Moving along, Administrative Review Report.
Yes, we have received no applications for administrative review.
Thank you. I shouldn't say I was pleased that we only have one item, but it's been insinuated perhaps that because the economy and interest rates might be slowing things down a little bit, but we've had such a flurry of activity for so long that maybe it's just a little hiccup in the delivery. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Moving along, item 1, a public hearing, site plan, AFD Properties LLC, Tractor Supply Company, a request to construct a 22,000 square foot Tractor Supply Company retail store with parking and associated infrastructure on Ossipee Trail. Zoned RC, map 76, lot 20. The applicant is represented by Doug Reynolds with Goral Palmer. I will look to planning to introduce this, please. Damon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the second time this item has been before the board. It was before the board for sketch plan review in September 2024, where the board gave input on the proposal, and the applicant's now back with site plan they've put together for your review that incorporates that feedback. So some items that have come up through staff review. So there's still, we've got a few outstanding items, state permits for stormwater from Environmental Protection, Department of Health and Human Services well permit because it's above a certain number of users anticipated. They need to have a drinking public well permit. The applicant's proposing a shared driveway between Tractor Supply and the proposed future development. And we'd look for easement language. That the easement's shown on the plan, but we'd look for language for review of that easement. There's some comments in the peer review engineering memo dated 10/24 that should be addressed. Some other staff comments to flag. Sign standards should be reviewed. It looks like they proposed a 48 square foot sign, 36 square feet is allowed, so we'd look for them to adjust that. Landscape areas might be adjusted to allow for better viewing of the outdoor display area. We could work with the applicant on that. And finally, we look for the board to inquire about the financial capacity provided to see that it meets standards. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Damon. What's our pleasure? Do we want, or do we want a public hearing?
I'd suggest letting
preference.
the applicant give an overview
Sure.
and add to the lead-in and then public hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds, please.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Kerman. With me is Doug Reynolds. We are with Goral Palmer, representing the applicant AFD Properties for the proposed tractor supply. The site is located on Route 25 between Chet's Auto Sale and M&B Tractor and Equipment. It's located in the roadside commercial district, which permits retail development. The site is approximately 5 acres, and it's a portion of Tax Map 76, Lot 20, which is currently undeveloped woodlands. The applicant is proposing a 22,000 square foot tractor supply building with a 20,000 square foot outdoor display area. The current landowner requested that we provide a shared access drive in case the adjacent lot ever be developed in the future. So we are working with the current landowner to get the appropriate agreements put together as far as that goes. We have a loading and turnaround area for delivery vehicles behind the building. And in front of the building, we have 77 parking spaces, which during the sketch plan meeting, the planning board approved a reduction in the parking spaces so that we didn't have unnecessary parking spaces. As far as utilities go, we have a on-site septic field with the field located in the back corner of the property. We submitted a subsurface wastewater application to the town as part of the application. We have an on-site well that we are proposing to use instead of extending the public water supply system, that requirement was waived by the planning board during the sketch plan meeting. And since we have a drinking fountain inside the store, it is considered a transient public water supply. So that requires us to get a permit approval from the DHHS. So we've submitted an application for preliminary approval, and we'll keep you updated as far as those communications go. CMP indicated their ability to serve the project via their 3-phase power that runs along Route 25. And we have 2 propane tanks behind the building that will serve to heat the building. The development requires a stormwater law application or permit from the DEP, which was submitted shortly after the town application was submitted, and I believe the town should have a copy of that. And we will continue to include the town on any correspondence with the DEP as it relates to the stormwater law permit application. As far as stormwater management goes, we're proposing 2 grass soil filters behind the building that will treat and detain stormwater runoff. And as it has been designed, it is designed in compliance with the Maine DEP Chapter 500 requirements. To date, we've received a number of comments from the staff and planning board, and we've worked to address them. Among those include reducing the parking and providing, removing a double-loaded row of parking out front of the building. We added some notes to the architectural plans to add some clarification to some items. We removed a couple of trees out front that were blocking the outdoor display area. And then there were a few outstanding items that were mentioned earlier with the access easement, the sign, and the peer review comments, which seem to be pretty easily addressed in future revisions. So we would be, based on discussions with the applicant, we would be fine with those being conditions of approval. So that's pretty much my gist. We're excited to work with the town. You guys have been very helpful with this development. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
Thank you. Any members of the board? We can revisit this after we have the public hearing, but what's your pleasure? Please,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Walsh.
I may have asked this at the sketch plan, but my question was around the traffic. I know there was a comment in there that I don't believe a traffic study is required, but what would trigger it? You have a shared driveway for future development, and let's just assume it's another retail complex. If there isn't a traffic study, first off, am I right? A traffic study is not required for this, but would a future development of the other parcel trigger a traffic study? I don't know who's the best person to answer that.
So I guess the first question, are you talking a traffic study requirement from the town, or are you talking a traffic study requirement from DOT? Because there's two different standards.
I'd say both.
So the town is really, I think our traffic study is tied to the number of parking spaces to be developed on the site. And I can't remember the exact number, but there's a number that says if you're going to provide parking for a set number of parking spaces, then you have to do a traffic study. DOT is a little bit different. It's more about timing and trip generation guidelines. So if that proposed lot adjacent to Tractor Supply is developed within a certain time frame, DOT will make you count both together, and you may have to do a traffic study.
Okay.
I think of the one that we're currently reviewing in this area is what we foresee as being a dollar or retail location and the storage units. If you
Right.
remember, we approved the storage units with the building out front.
Yeah.
Now the building out front came forward. They're going to have to count both trips, and they may trip DOT. So they don't trip us, but they trip DOT.
Okay. So the answer is depending on what goes in on the other side.
And then when?
Yeah. And when? Why is time a factor?
I think it's just the TMP requirements under DOT. I think there's like a 3 to 5 year window, I think. It's some kind of window. The sunset it, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you. We may call you back up when we have some questions, but right now I'd like to open it up as a public hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, if anyone in the audience would like to speak or address this issue, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. How about if we set some rules here and say you got 5 minutes?
Okay,
that
that's
fair?
more than enough. That's more than fair.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Pickett. I am a resident here in Gorham. I live at 486 Ospey Trail. As you know, this is going to be almost in my front yard. So I'm just going to make my piece. I'll make it very brief. So I am not in favor of this proposed plan. I don't think it's good for the neighborhood. I don't think it's good for the environment. I know that my neighbors, myself, we deal with an already overwhelming amount of traffic along Ospey Trail in that area, just from general traffic flow from summer residents to overall traffic flow heading into Standish. It's getting backed up, it's getting congested. There's a lot of people that like to overtake the lanes going in and from Standish, which can be, as you can imagine, a very hazardous situation. I also know in that area, it's home to hundreds of birds, fox, skunk, other flora and fauna that are native to our areas. That's very important. Unfortunately, Gorham has had a track record of continually developing these forested woodland areas. It's a very rare and scarce commodity to have such an area as expansive as that. I feel like it needs to be protected. I'd also like to address the protection of our dark skies. Something that is overlooked in any development, whether it be residential or commercial. I propose that any development like this takes that into serious consideration, again, for birds, especially birds, for the migration of birds, and also just to protect our night sky. It's a rare asset, and I think that we need to take that into consideration. I strongly encourage the developers to look at the Dark Sky Maine website, to look at how they can mitigate that the light pollution if this is going to go forward. I don't want to have LED lights illuminating all throughout the night. We already deal with it with MB Tractor Supply. It lights up like it's daytime. It's absurd. And I want that to be strongly considered if this were to be pushed forward. But I am right now staunchly against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to address us?
So, good evening, I'm Holly Wilson, and I live at 490 Ossipee Trail in Gorham. So we are next door neighbors, and again, the driveway for this building is in front of our driveways and will include a large span of the front of our household, which would include all of the lighting that goes into the front of this building, the headlights that come in and out of the cars coming out of that building. The front windows of my house is our living room and bedrooms, and I have zero interest in having my children grow up in a house that has headlights constantly coming into their bedrooms and interrupting their sleep. I agree with this, with the lighting from the night sky. We already have other buildings that interrupt that, and to continue to add to that would be unfortunate. I am concerned about the water. We already have really poor water in that area. We have a massive water filtration system in our home because of the poor water supply, and I can't imagine that digging around with the high water table, that you're not going to continue to really upset our water flow that is right across the street. Again, the water table is very high, and we don't even have a full well because it's too high. So that's very concerning as well. I am also very concerned about the traffic. The number of cars that come in and out of Standish, they get backed up every single night beyond our household. It goes down even beyond Chet's Auto. Traffic is stopped for a good number of minutes as people are coming up from Standish. And in other times, you've got people who are going 65, 70 miles an hour, passing each other. It is a very long thoroughfare from Standish all the way down through, and the commute times in the morning and afternoon are very scary. Turning left into my driveway is very scary when I have to stop and wait for traffic to come through because there's just not enough space there for somebody to pull around you. And we know that people aren't paying attention anymore when they're driving. When I try to turn out of my driveway and turn left out of my driveway on any given day, I have to be very careful because people are constantly passing cars in lanes that you were not expecting them to be in. So it's already a hazardous place to live. And again, adding more traffic without a traffic study makes me very, very, very uncomfortable. So my husband and I are not 100% opposed, but would like to see a lot of these issues addressed before we would be comfortable having this type of development across the street from our house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rosemary McCullough. I actually live at 18 Amber Way in Gorham. First of all, let me say, I did not know a lot about this request. And if it weren't for my neighbors, I would not have even known. I'm not sure why I didn't receive any notification about this kind of thing happening. But they were good enough to share that information with me. So I'm here tonight to just kind of put that out there in front of everyone. I absolutely am concerned, again, from my perspective, with the roadway and the traffic. Like these guys, you take a right, and if you don't stomp on that car and get out there, you can't even pull out into the road. It is not safe. I also have to agree that when we come home at night, I come from Portland, so I commute every day. And when I come home at night, I have a hard time pulling into my own driveway and taking a left and watching cars go by me 65 miles an hour and bracing for the potential of getting absolutely smashed into. I know this isn't about necessarily just about traffic, but it's definitely a concern. And when I looked at the plan, it does look like the driveway sits on, if I looked at it right, it looks like it's on the left-hand side of where they're going to come behind Chet's. So when I come out of the end of my road, which is private, and come out, Chet's is literally just at an angle. So when I think about going from the edge of their property over, their driveway looks like it's going to be right across from Holly and Chad. So I think about how are people going to maneuver around that. I'm back a ways, so I don't necessarily have a lot of the light and the reflection stuff that they bring, but I think it's important to be considered. I have my own things going on in my own backyard. For the last 10 or 12 days, they've been taking down 300 and 400 foot pines behind my house. My entire house shakes. I can see through all of that. I don't know who I'm going to talk to, but I am going to talk to somebody about finding out what's happening back there. I don't know that I'm necessarily severely opposed to it, but I guess, like I said, not knowing this and hearing this for the first time, it sounds like this has all been brought before. And I don't know, is it because my house sits back off the road? Do I not live close enough to them to receive notification? I'm not really sure how that works. I've been a resident of Gorham for 15 years, and this is my first time coming to a meeting. So I just thought it was important for you to hear from all of us. That's really all I have to say, so thank you.
Thank you. If I could take a moment, Tom, I don't want to catch you off guard. You addressed this previously with other projects that have come before us. Would you please explain the legal requirements about notification?
Yes, the requirement for site plan notification is what's called legal abutters. So any property that directly abuts this proposed lot would be notified. If you're not a direct abutter, you wouldn't get notified. It's not a requirement. So that's why your neighbors got notified, but you didn't.
I'm sorry, Tom, that's a legal requirement by the state, or is that a town regulation? Who governs that?
I believe the term abutters is in our land use code, so that's what governs it as the land use code.
So it's our own
Correct.
document.
Yep. The town could change it to abutters within so many feet if they wanted to. Again, the onus would be on the town to figure out who that was. If you did projects, site plan approvals, and you were within 100 feet, it would all be a land use code change by the council.
The reason I ask is this has come up a couple of times, and so maybe that's I don't know what the right committee to review that would be. Perhaps our own ordinance committee would.
You could review and make a recommendation to the council.
Yeah, town council would have to pass it, of course. But.
Correct, yeah. I think if the planning board had concerns, you could identify that to the council that you want to look into it, and then suggest a recommendation to them.
Okay.
Thank you, Colonel. Good point. Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing with the public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council, the planning board? My faux pas.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Pickett. Christopher is my husband and we live at 486 Ossipee Trail. Again, how my neighbors stress traffic was a huge concern. So it also leads to the question, if this development were to happen, are we going to improve roadways? Are we going to make, traffic lights a thing? Are we going to figure out, are we going to widen the lanes? Because it's very nerve-wracking pulling in and out of our driveways daily. I also commute to Portland, so that drive is about 45 minutes as it is, and then waiting in traffic to pull in, so it's a little rough. But my question is, why did you guys choose Gorham when you have locations in Wyndham and Scarborough?
Excuse me? I apologize, please. You're supposed to address the planning board itself?
Oh, sorry, this is my first one.
That's okay, that's okay. Many people.
Yeah, I would just say if you want to ask a question, just say that you have a question, and then we'll consider it, and then we may be able to deliberate it afterwards.
Oh, okay.
That's
Sorry,
kind
guys.
of the way it works.
Okay, so my question is, why are we considering Gorham when we have locations in Wyndham and in Scarborough, which are 15 minutes away, and what benefits will it bring to Gorham? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I'm just writing as quick as I can. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone else?
Evening. My name's Charles Wilson. I live at 490. My question was around the stormwater runoff. Is there any protection, say somebody dumps a gallon of gasoline in the parking lot? Are the filtration system that are proposed going to be able to take care of that, or is it just basic stormwater with silt and all that? The reason why I asked, my wife hinted at, we all have surface water, we have surface wells, we have well points in our area. So if we have contamination in our water, it becomes unusable. So I was hoping that the public water was going to be extended to this facility, so that potentially we wouldn't have these issues anymore with storm runoff and whatnot. So that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, ladies and gentlemen, anyone like to address this public hearing? Going once. Anyone else? Going twice? I'll close the public hearing. Thank you all for participating. Throwing it back to the planning board now, please. Questions, concerns? We want to bring the engineer back up,
Yes.
if you don't mind. We heard a couple of questions there. We may want them answered as to best of your knowledge. And any other concerns?
As far as the lighting goes, our lighting design was included in the application package, and it does meet the ordinances. We've got the shields on the fixtures aimed downwards so they won't kind of go up and kind of act like traditional floodlights would, and they're pointed down and directed towards the parking lot. As far as where Tractor Supply why they wanted to develop in Gorham, that's kind of beyond our purview. They choose the locations based on their market studies and what have you. So I can't really speak to why they wanted to select Gorham. As far as the treatment for stormwater, that was designed based on Maine DEP Chapter 500, but as far as kind of what prevents gasoline from getting into the groundwater and things of that nature, we have proposed snouts inside of the catch basins, which collect all your floatable materials, which would include gasoline.
Could you explain that a little bit more, expand on that a little bit more than the engineering jargon that some of us may be familiar with, just to give them some reassurances as to what you're doing or proposing?
So inside each catch basin, like your pipe outlet has a snout that kind of comes over it into the water line. And where your water line is above the snout, it kind of, everything floats on top of the water. So gasoline would float on top of the water, and it would be kind of stopped from going into the pipe by the snout, because it kind of goes underneath the bottom of the snout and into the pipe, if that makes sense.
Is it a type of check valve?
No, it's...
No? Okay.
Yeah, it's just something that goes on the end of the pipe and
Okay.
kind of prevents it from going in.
Water goes one way, not the other.
Correct. Yeah.
Mr. Walsh, please.
I guess I am familiar with the snout, but essentially, it's a baffle. And you're just depending on evaporation for that gasoline to evaporate if it isn't found. Is that correct?
Basically, gasoline or gasoline products floats on water.
Correct.
The water level is above the bottom of the snout, so whenever water comes
Sir?
in.
Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Doug Reynolds, Goral Palmer. Yeah, the water comes in pushes the water down and up underneath the snout. So again, no floatables, leaves, tin cans, things like that float on the level and don't go downstream into the stormwater system.
Thank you.
Again, if a leak happens, those can be maintained and cleaned out.
Yeah.
All set, Mr. Walsh, is that?
Yes.
Please, Mr. Walsh.
Well, you know, I'm going to ask, there's some good questions raised, and I'm sympathetic to the neighbors, because you have an area that is not really a retail area. It's got some commercial operations, no doubt, but it doesn't have a high volume retail. And you have residential. And now I think the issue has been brought up not only about, you know, the streetlights, which you pointed out meet the code. Okay, I get that. But one thing that was raised by one of the neighbors who said their home is across the street, and where the driveway comes straight out, they're going to be going right into the house. I mean, is there anything you can think to do on that one? Because I can be sympathetic to that. That sounds like it can be a real intrusion into their privacy.
I mean, trees potentially, I guess, between the driveway and the residential home could potentially help prevent headlights.
Yeah, that's something the developer would be interested in helping the neighbor with.
I mean,
I'm seeing a head shaking no over there.
can't say for sure.
We can't answer that for the developer.
Yeah, well-
That's not typically something that would,
Yeah,
you know, would
but
do.
can you ask the developer?
We could, if that's,
I would appreciate
if that's
that.
the desire of the board, but again, it's a project that's, you know, meets the zoning requirements, so.
Understood. But it would be a nice thing to ask.
Members of the board, any other questions for the engineer? Yes, please, Mr. Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, looking, with respect to the headlights and the neighbors and all, looking at the diagram here, your entrance and exit is basically a T, a right angle with the highway, the road. Wondering if you've considered a sort of a modification to your entrance and exit so that the cars don't come directly 90 degrees and to the opposite properties. So like a little bit of an angle coming in and out might solve a perceived problem. Just a thought.
Well, typically we like to have, I guess, 90-degree angles with our intersections, and I believe that might be a town requirement as far as the angles of driveways against roads. So we need to be at like as close to 90 as possible is typically what's required. So.
Mr. Frank, would you like to perhaps look over to our right, put Mr. Norton on a...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do we have a specific question about angles of intersections here?
Yeah, just, I guess perhaps what I'm thinking of is a more wider radius of approach and exit, so that it's not like you come, then you make a hard right or a hard left, or the other way around, just gentle curves.
I would say increasing or, well, really not decreasing, but increasing the radii at intersections would really only achieve safer conditions for maybe larger vehicles. I think a passenger vehicle, regardless of the radii at the entrance and exit, is going to do what it wants to do. Now, I would also say that any adjustment to that entrance, because it's directly across from multiple residential lots, is going to maybe shift the impact from one to the other. I'm not entirely sure you're going to be able to negate that for all individuals in that area.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you for catching me off guard. Thank you. Anyone? Yes, please, Mr. Walsh.
I guess I'm going to throw this question over here. Was there any discussion in this project of a need for a center turn lane?
A two-way turn lane on Ossipee Trail?
Yeah.
No, because the traffic, we didn't reach the level of a traffic analysis for Ossipee Trail.
So basically, if you have the traffic that's going to be coming from Standish turning left into this complex
They would use the lane, and then anybody
have to go around them.
around would use the shoulder.
And you don't see that the traffic counts are justify widening out the road in that area?
Having not seen any of the traffic counts, I'd point to the engineer to see if that was looked at as far as turning movements.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just follow up? Because
Please.
it seems like that, we're looking at this proposal, in isolation as far as traffic goes, but the bigger picture as far as traffic, we've talked about other projects that are going to go on Ossipee Trail as well. Traffic has been a conversation on all of them. So at what point, or how does the entire traffic picture get accounted for in this process versus, when you just look at it as an independent project, then maybe we miss the bigger picture of the traffic on 25.
So we just had a traffic movement permit meeting today regarding the other project, the gas station, right? So 100 trips in the peak hour, that's what trips the traffic study. So we met with the DOT. And in the 100 trips in the peak hour, that project is just barely tripping the left turn lane movement into that site. So that's the number of trips that you need to typically do those kinds of off-site improvements. I mean, it's usually significant because of the cost and the widening. Now, I look to, if the planning board has concerns, you could always ask Goral Palmer to look at if there's a left turn into the site, is there adequate room for cars to go around and the paved shoulder? My guess is yes, because there's significant paved shoulder there. If you look at Westcott Motors and some of the other sites, commercial sites, they're already doing that movement, right? There's a significant number of commercial entities along there with left-hand turns in there. So this is another one. At some point, the town will have to look at a left turn lane or a center turn lane. We're just not there. At some point, my guess is we will be there, but it will be the town most likely doing a lot of the improvements, unless smaller projects that have a lot of trips, like the gas station, will trip it.
So how do we know as a town when we get there? We're the planning board, right?
Correct.
And so the public's watching, and they're like, hey, we're talking about traffic, and as you say, the town at some point has to address it.
As part of their application, they identified a number of trips that will be visiting the site. That number did not trip concerns.
I understand that.
Yeah, did not trip concerns for the left turn into that site.
But if you add this and the gas station and the storage location and the retail that's being proposed, and you take them all together and you add all that traffic now added to the potentially additional traffic added to that space, like there's a cumulative effect, right?
Sum total.
Yes. You would think that would make traffic more difficult.
One part of the discussion with the DOT actually that we had today was what additional projects were happening in this corridor. And the DOT does take that into consideration when reviewing traffic movement permits and making.
Okay, so that gets done by the DOT.
Yep, it's a DOT road. Well,
it's a highway, right?
That's the type of study that's tripped when you reach those movements, the requisite number of movements.
And the town doesn't have the ability to impact this developer because of the impacts of another development that are occurring at the same time. We don't have that ability to say, this development didn't have to do anything, but now you have to do everything. We just don't have that ability to do that as part of our site plan review requirements.
Sure, there's probably a distance within a mile with all these businesses now that the sum total is going to be.
It's going to be significant.
We hope someone, MDOT, is paying attention. Otherwise, our hands are tied.
Correct. Unless, yes, correct.
Anyone else?
Yeah, David Burrows, I have a question. I wanted to address the concern about the wildlife that's on the land. This is zoned, I assume, commercial. There's no protection for the wildlife. So I guess I just wanted the town to address the concern that the wildlife is just going to be disrupted by development and there's no recourse to that. Could you say why that is?
Correct. So unless the wildlife is what's considered rare, threatened, or endangered, there's no protections associated with it regarding development. There's no vernal pools or any of those kind of significant features on the site, so it doesn't get looked at for that requirement to protect wildlife. Unfortunately, as development happens, it gets pushed off into those areas that aren't developed. So that's not a requirement the planning board looks at as part of site plan review.
Burrows, is that good?
Thanks, yeah, thanks.
Ms. Nichols first.
I just want to follow up on that because I also picked up on oops, I'm sorry. I also wanted to follow up on that concern of neighbors of taking over habitat. And my thinking was that the town plan, our comprehensive plan, sets aside certain areas for commercial growth and other areas for residential areas that is also going to disrupt wildlife. And then keeping in mind that we have to also protect the environment and have space for wildlife, because otherwise we have people who move into neighborhoods and are all upset because a fox went across their front yard. Well, you know, we just took his habitat. So I think that's very important that we do that and that we let the public know that that is part of planning.
It is, and so in Gorham's case, that's the rural district, right? So we identify our growth districts and then those areas that we're looking to preserve for either forestry, farmland, or other conservation efforts is the rural district. So if anybody's ever looking at the zoning map, it used to be in here somewhere, but if you have the zoning map and you look at it, the rural district is those areas identified as a lighter green. That's the areas the town is looking to preserve. So in Gorham's case, mostly North Gorham and then a smaller section towards southwestern Gorham.
And just to follow up on what Tom said, this area is envisioned in the comprehensive plan to be corridor commercial. So roadside commercial zoning reflects that. That's the current zoning, and that does match the comprehensive plan. So it's consistent with that. I will note that there is a requirement in the comprehensive plan for buffering, and that is also a zoning requirement. So the buffering, landscape buffer, vegetated buffers are intended to help provide screening and lessen the impacts between developments such as this one, commercial developments, and then residential properties. So that's the kind of the tool for helping to address that concern that's in the zoning and the comprehensive plan. And based on our review, this application does meet those requirements for the buffering.
Thank you. Is that, Ms. Nichols, okay? You okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So-
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you. If I may follow up, I have two things. And Damon, I'll start with you. You mentioned the buffering, and and coming back around to where I was about trees. If we were on the side lot, it would be an easy discussion. You're talking landscaping. If you want to buffer with your side neighbor, because it's the same piece of land, contiguous piece of land. I guess what I'm asking in this situation where we have someone across the street who sounds like if they truly are directly across the street, why that vegetative buffering could not be extended, requirement could be extended to the other side of the road to help with the neighbor. And again, I'm asking, I know you can't answer for the developer, but I'm saying it would be a really nice thing to do. And if the town can even require it by extending our buffering requirement in that respect, I'd ask that we do that too.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And just to be clear, the buffer, there is a requirement for a 25-foot buffer in the front landscape buffer, but as you point out, that doesn't include the actual driveway location.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we're really talking that. Tom, you look like you have a comment.
Well, it gets a little concerning when you're asking a developer to go on a butter's property to put landscaping. So it gets it gets a little dicey on what that looks like and what that requirement is. So, I mean, what are we identifying, like a number of trees, or are we just asking them to go talk to them? Because for me, then I've got to try to figure out how to enforce the requirement of the planning board, and then kind of what that is. I think, to me, the driveway is a harder point, right? You're going to have, whether this is a residential development where you have cars going in and out, say this is a subdivision, you're going to have headlight impacts, right? And I understand that some are worse than others. And I don't know if Goral Palmer, I think the better part of it is the driveway is what it is, but can we look to mitigate the impacts of headlights in the parking lot, right? So the driveway is what it is, but can we look to have a landscape buffer that breaks up the headlights in the parking lot so it doesn't affect the abutters to the greatest extent practical? I think that's something that we could easily condition, and then we'll get to a lot of that. Because once you turn into the site, you've got to circulate in the parking lot. So if we can mitigate some of that, I think that would definitely help.
Tom, I think you're thinking along the right line. Thank you for that. If they could go along the edge, I know it might obstruct some of the vision of the store from the street, but it actually could help because, as you say, when you have cars turning in the parking lot, it's going to throw light out towards the street. But I would also ask, the engineers to ask the developer, be a good neighbor. Now, the town may have a difficulty requiring it because of some legalese, and I can understand that as well. But there's nothing to prevent the developer from being a good neighbor and trying to possibly mitigate a problem with their neighbor. It might just require a hedgerow of some sort, and that just might be a nice thing to do. So I'd just like to go on the record on that. That took me off. Oh, yeah, I had one other thing. There was in the...
If we're through with the engineer, I know the planning board has a lot more stuff to share, but if we think we're finished, he could sit down and take copious notes.
I have one question for him.
Okay, thanks.
In the peer review, there was a comment that they thought the snow storage area might be a little light. You said you were going to be easily addressing most of those issues. Is that one that concerns you will be addressing?
That should be fine to address that one.
What's that now?
We should be able to meet the snow storage requirements pretty easily.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else for the engineer? All right, don't go away. You might be interested in hearing what we have to ask.
All righty.
Thank you. Mr. Burrows, you've been waiting patiently.
So recently we did require, I believe, a condition, a landscape buffer for the self-storage facility. There's already a row of trees there that's on the corner of Dingley Springs and Ospey Trail. So we required the developer to maintain the existing row of trees, and they went along with that. And so I think that they were amenable to our request that they provide a buffer. And I think that this is a similar situation where we want to screen the building from the street and from the neighbors so that they don't have to see the parking lot in the building and uninterrupted. So hopefully, I don't know the site. I don't know if there are trees there now, but if there are, we should try to have them preserved. If not, maybe we should have some planting parallel to the street. And I don't really know the scale of this. There is a note for a 25-foot landscaped buffer. I don't know how intense that is and if it would achieve, the screening you'd like to have, but I think we've got an opportunity there to with preserve or plant trees to screen the parking from the street. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Burrows. What's your pleasure? Do we want to go through the application? Do we want to go through the planning department notes? Where are we? I have some comments on the notes, but I don't want to steal anyone's thunder.
I have some comments on the notes as
Please.
well, and then
Please.
just in relation to the drawings. And so, all right, let's go through here. So there were a couple of, and this is still, I know at some point I'm not really a new member anymore, but I'm still learning. So things like where there's questions about whether the fire lane is, appropriate and showing up, and whether the septic is, meets the 300-foot distance from the well. Those are in the notes. Are we to comment on those, or are we to expect that the contractor and the builders take those notes and put it into their revisions, and that we just wait to see them follow through?
You want me to take a stab? Or do you, we want to...
Yeah, if you want to take a stab.
We do have the notes, we have the questions in here. Me personally, expecting that there's a coordination between the planning department and all of the other departments within the town. I would expect, I had a question about that Chief Fickett may have addressed the fire lane, et cetera. I haven't seen that he's responded to that yet. That may be in the mix. I don't know, but there were other things like that. Tom, would you like to add to that?
Yes, correct. So again, I think Wright Pierce identifies comments, and then really it's the purview of the fire chief. So they've got the review. I think they were just flagging that, and then the fire chief gets them, and then if he doesn't have comments, then he doesn't have comments. So sometimes there are requirements, sometimes they're not. Really, for NFPA, the ultimate say is the fire chief. So he'll identify it for you if there are certain requirements needed for fire safety.
Okay, so no sense wasting everybody's time going through those that are already to be vetted until we get further along in the process.
It's good to air it out, though. It's very good to air it out. Thank you. Would you like to, you mentioned also the drawings.
Those were them, because then I started searching to see where the septic was and the well was and whether there was distance, and then I thought, should I be doing that or just noting it?
You are allowed to speak. You're allowed to ask. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Because other people, and this goes across the spectrum of all the different groups that I've worked with, somebody else might have a similar question, but they're too shy to ask. So please don't hesitate. Sometimes you can take a piece of paper and pass it over to Colonel Benson and have him ask for you.
There you go. Gonna have to get closer.
Other members, please. Anything? If you don't mind, I'll jump in and then cut me off if you want, please. I'm looking on page 5 of 20. Very first paragraph, the applicant has redesigned parking, blah, 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 to 77 spaces. I see 76 spaces written several times in this document. I've seen 77. Is 77 a typo? Are we 76, 77? If it's a typo.
I believe what we did was we allowed them to reduce the number, the board allowed a waiver to reduce the number to 76. So they're proposing 77, which exceeds the waived requirement by 1. So they're in compliance with the requirement as waived.
Okay, it was 110, there was a waiver to 76, but they can add.
They can add but not go below the 76 without another waiver or further discussion of that, yeah.
Thank you. There was also on page 5, applicant, several bulleted items down. Applicant should consider changing the configuration of trees. I believe that's for aesthetics, maybe for noise abatement, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's been captured, that comment. Public Works, I'm sure I'm going to hear from Terry. We need to take a good look at the entrance and the front setback. That was noted August 21st. I'm going to ask Mr. Deering, when will he look at it? It just, maybe you need to give him a call. I don't know.
I'll look to town engineer for.
I'm not aware of
feedback on
the meeting, the good look at the entrance, but we can definitely touch base with Public Works.
Sure, thank you. No disrespect to you, I just,
No, sometimes the Public Works Director is specifically talking about driveway culverts and management of stormwater at the roadside and within the town's right-of-way.
Okay.
So that could be it, but he also could be talking about site distance. This particular location is pretty good site distance.
That's my guess is site distance. I think he just wanted to make sure that the display area wasn't too close to the front of the site to block site distance. My guess, but we can check with him.
thank you. Moving on to page 7, these are the notes from Wright Pierce. We've already mentioned this about fire lane, if Chief Fickett has or has not had a chance to chime in on that yet. The slope of the stormwater, they're talking about minuscule, 1/16 of an inch a foot. I mean, that's tiny. I'm okay with that. Page 9, we already talked about 77 spaces, exceed 76, so that's okay. Please allow me. I'm moving along to page 13 now. We do have a couple of highlighted items. The water supply, the site will be served by well water. That's something the planning board is planning department is continuing to review because that's a condition.
Correct, yes. We're awaiting the permit they've applied for from the state.
Thank you, and it continues on page 14 as well for transient public water. Same thing, those two permits have not been received yet, right?
Correct.
Thank you. Moving along to page 16, financial capacity. I guess we would like to see some kind of assurance that there's financial ability to move forward with this.
That's correct. We would invite the board to ask the applicant if they have any additional information they'd like to provide regarding financial capacity. They've included several statements regarding the work of the developer, the Tractor Supply, so normally we'd look for something like a bank letter.
Sure, yes, yeah.
So that's why we flagged that.
We've seen that from other projects, thank you.
So just to follow up, so I'm confused. Is it a requirement or is it something the board asked for?
This is something, it's a requirement that the board is satisfied that they've met, so there are various ways they can show that they have the financial capacity. I don't know.
Typically, that's a requirement that the board typically requires developers. Now, you could always accept something else,
right,
but it's your determination that they meet financial capacity. Now, the board in the past has identified a letter from a financial institution. If you get something else that you feel comfortable with this proposal that you think they have financial capacity to move forward, you would just identify what that is and then move forward with that meeting this requirement.
So that's a planning board decision, not a planning department decision?
Correct. It's your ruling that they meet financial capacity. And in the past, we've seen enough of these that it was almost like, okay, you get a letter from a bank and that the board would sign off on it. Now, people can do other means to show financial capacity, but again, it's the board's determination that they meet it.
Are you good with that?
Yes, thank you.
And finally, ladies and gentlemen, on page 19 and 20, the conditions of approval pretty much summarize all of the things in the previous 19 pages that we've been asking for, 18 pages, I'm sorry. And a few other comments, I guess, that I heard this evening that I don't see written in here. Maybe it's written sideways. I would like to make sure that the comments, maybe this is item number 17, and please correct me if I'm wrong, comments by Wright Pierce should be part of the conditions of approval. Several of their comments.
So if you look at condition of approval number 3, any staff and peer review comments shall be addressed prior to the board signing of the plan. We think that summarizes.
We don't need to say right here specifically. Peer review is good.
Peer review is fine.
I'm looking at Mr. Norton shaking his head like a bubble doll. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for reassuring me. Mr. Walsh, you mentioned something about being a good neighbor. It would be nice, I guess, if we could have something, some guidelines, some suggestions on this headlight type thing.
The buffering requirements?
Something, however we can address that. I heard Mr. Burrows also say about this other project, but I believe that was on land, that was on their own land, not across the street.
Right, well, the only place I think this would work would be on their own land.
Yes, yeah, sure. I've said enough. Anyone else, please add, change, edit something I've said, or add your own. Please, Colonel.
Sir, so Damon, the conditions of approval, number 10, prior to construction meeting, all applicant will establish the following performance guarantee totaling 150% of the cost, and then 125% of total construction cost of all remaining site improvements. So doesn't that meet de facto the requirement to provide financial capacity?
Well, they need to provide it. They haven't provided it thus far.
Right. But if these are written into conditions of approval, then we don't need to see a separate.
So this is for off-site improvements. So if this proposal doesn't have any off-site improvements, like it's not widening a road or anything like that, they don't put any performance guarantee up, except right before they're going to have occupancy. If they don't have landscaping done, then we would require a performance guarantee. So there's no requirement for a performance guarantee if they don't have off-sites. I don't believe this project has any off-site improvements.
I don't see off-sites in number 11. I don't see off-sites, unless I'm missing it.
So prior to the issuance of a temporary or final occupancy permit, so we don't get that up front. So basically what will happen is they'll build as much as they can, and if there's no improvements, like if they want an occupancy permit and the site's not completed, we do a performance guarantee at that point. It's a little bit different than a residential project. Residential, we get performance guarantee up front because we want to make sure that anybody moving into development, that we have the funds to finish the development should the developer walk. Commercial development is it's your site, you develop it. Now, when you get an occupancy permit and you want to open your facility, we want to make sure all the landscaping is in, the stormwater works for the approval, then we would do a performance guarantee, but we don't do it up front.
Okay. I would be interested in adding a financial capacity statement then as a condition, since that requirement has not been met. And traditionally, we do ask for a financial statement, capacity statement from all the other projects that I've at least approved. We've had one from a bank, and I don't think we should start making exceptions on that. So I would add that as a condition of approval.
Mm-hmm. If the board would like to do so, we certainly could. I do think that is something we could review under item 3. So prior to having the board sign the plans, we'd have to have the bank letter in hand. But it really depends on how the board's feeling about this and whether you're looking to approve it tonight or recommend going to.
I have a decent feeling about this. I'm only speaking for myself, but I would like to see the words financial capacity in writing. Number 3 could be capturing everything else, but I have seen these letters of credit perhaps from other projects. I've even questioned them because they were dated 8 or 9 months before, and I'm wondering, do they still have the money in the bank or have they spent it already?
So what I would recommend then is a new condition of approval 17, that the applicant shall provide a letter of financial capacity from a financial institution or other acceptable institution.
Prior to the board signing the plans?
Yeah, that's fine.
We're good with that. You can wordsmith that, or,
I could read it back if you would like. That proof of financial capacity from a financial institution is required prior to the board signing the plans?
works for me. Everyone good with that?
Yep.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to belabor this, but please, let's give it its due diligence. Are there any other questions, concerns, things we heard? Mr. Walsh?
Well, I'm just circling back, I've spoken a lot about this headlights across the street, but, Tom, I think you had good reason to say that it's hard to put it into a condition approval, and I don't know how to put, asking the developer to be a good neighbor and possibly meet with the neighbors to explore means to mitigate or minimize headlight disturbances directly across the street. I don't know if we can put that in as a condition of approval, or just, I'd like to see that the representative of the developer may at least acknowledge that.
To go circle around, the applicant has worked with the planning department and covered the bases, sports metaphor, covered the bases and followed the guidelines that are written in the comprehensive plan and for roadside commercial.
Yes.
So they've done that.
Yes.
And I think we're acknowledging that with a couple of exceptions that we want to see some more teeth in this agreement. So to members of the community, not understanding where we are, these are the rules. This is what's written. It's on writing. It's on the website. We can research it. Everything is there in black and white. And thanks to the planning department, our purview, review, some discussion with the engineer, we just haven't seen the developer say, sure, I want to be a good neighbor. I'm not saying they won't be.
Yes.
But we're trying to appease both sides here.
Yeah, no, and I'm fully cognizant with what Tom is saying. We can't put that in as a condition of approval, but I just, I think you've heard me. So.
By all means.
I know public hearing is out. Let's see if I can do this. Here he comes. Everybody's waiting. So, again, this is a screenshot of the aerial photo where the driveway is here. Again, if I'm coming out of there and I'm going right, they're just going to go right. If it's left, it's got the headlights will be going straight across here. Again, pretty well treed. I can't tell exactly how many trees are over there. But again, for your comfort, there is something there. Again, the developer, they could go over, we could say, we can try to put some hedges there. You put hedges there, then you can't see the house at all. Then the hedges die. It can't be like Tom says, we can't make it survive for more than a year, and so again, it's not the best case. It's in a commercial district. It's what happens. I can absolutely ask my client if they're willing to go and again look at it. Is it necessary? Is it, if we put the driveway out on a stake in the middle of the driveway out here and look directly across the street and see if there's anything we can do that.
That's all I can ask.
Yep.
Yeah. If I think reaching out would be meaningful.
Yep. We can do that.
I'll just throw this out. I'm looking at this snapshot and thinking, well, why don't we just take a mirror image and move the driveway to the other side? Well, I answer my own question, because this driveway is to perhaps be a shared driveway, so there really is no other location to put the driveway. You can't do a mirror image.
Correct.
We may be saving if we moved it to the right, but you're still going to need a driveway on the left.
Right.
As we're looking at it.
Correct. And again, it's hard to see the driveway, but based on the survey, their driveway is pretty darn close to there. So again, I just can't see it. Again, we tried to align it with the driveway across the street for traffic reasons.
It might add a few billable hours, but perhaps you can look at some of the property across the street and better define some of those features, so the board, next round, can review, planning department can see.
Yep. Again, that's hadn't been brought up until now, so it's not something we specifically looked at because of that.
Sure, understood. And any other questions? Please, Mr. Frank.
Not truly a question, but just to amplify, I think, of what you said, Mr. Chair, about the level of detail that we might wish to see or hear about. This is exactly how we're going to mitigate or alleviate, the lighting problem. I think at this level, we don't need that precise definition of this is exactly how we're going to do it. That's just my thought.
Sure. Agreed. Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Just a comment in that, we've been focusing on a couple of, these issues, that the neighbors have brought up, which we appreciate. But I do say this is a very well presented package, and I do appreciate that coming in at this level. I mean, your sketch plan was very detailed, which we appreciated as well.
Thank you. To echo that, we've seen some of these packages presented before, and this particular package is only 20 pages of comments which span the time. And we've seen some of these 30, 35, 40 pages coming back and forth. So there is some extra work that's been done here which moves the process along. And thanks to the planning department for digging in. Ladies and gentlemen, anything more? Anything else? Any other conditions?
Did we end up with one additional condition on the,
Number 17 on the financial piece.
as amended? Okay.
Mr. Walsh, if you're ready.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to move to grant AFD Properties LCC's request for site plan approval for construction of a retail store at Ospey Trail located at map 76, lot 20 in the roadside commercial zoning district, based on findings and facts and conditions of approval as written by the town planner and as amended by the planning board.
Touche. Is there a second, please?
Mr. Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. We've gone through this. We've read the conditions of approval. We've added another item. Any other discussion? Any other concerns?
I'm just going to say that it won't impact my vote tonight, but I do have concerns about a butter notification. I think we need to take that up as a board and request to the town council to review our butter notifications. And then I think we're going to continue to see traffic issues out on 25. And so I hope that, I know that's really not in our purview. There's no way for us to address that currently, but there may be in the future. And any prodding, or if we could get more information where DOT is on their review, or I would love to hear back on, if we could get an update on DOT's progress on that portion of Ospey, would be very helpful.
How about if we jump into other business with those very same
but I just wanted to,
Yes.
because I know sometimes people leave, and
Sure.
I wanted to make sure that.
They're going to watch it at home, I'm sure. Maybe. Well, if you run, I want to see Cooper Flag play basketball this evening. But please, I'm giving you. it's okay. I'm getting a score as we're sitting here.
Okay, good. I can say, Google, how's he doing? So I appreciate it, and I just want to say again, the traffic. I heard somebody make a comment about passing. There's no passing lane, okay? I've gone out on the side of the road and walked. There is no passing lane. It is not safe. And thank you, Mr. Benson, for continuing to have the conversation about the traffic. It is a nightmare. Second was a question. I heard somebody say something about they switched to well instead of city water. Is there a reason for that?
They exceed linear feet from a potable water source, and so we have the purview to waive that. It would add
Financial hardship.
a couple of $1 million perhaps to run a water line, and we waive that requirement. And it happens often.
Okay,
Not every time, but it happens often.
okay. And then lastly, is,
You said one question, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know, I said I'd be quick. Is tonight's meeting a place where you are soon going to vote on moving ahead, or is there going to be another conversation?
We are voting this evening on preliminary approval
Of?
for the site plan.
Okay, perfect. Not a,
Final. I'm sorry, I apologize. Final approval, as it's been presented this evening on the drawings and everything else that we've seen.
okay. I appreciate the picture of the property. My last comment. Is there any way, and I'm not an architect or, a doctor, and I don't play one on TV, is there any way or any consideration to open that up at a bigger angle? When you first showed the picture, it looked like it was straight on, and I appreciated the showing of, it looks like it, whoops, sorry, it comes in. I'm just wondering if there's a way to widen that so that when it comes in, it's a softer, and coming out, it's different.
I think your comments are very valid. I think you might want to meet with the planning department perhaps, and, no, honestly, the game's underway, we want to watch the game.
Okay.
So, no, it's a heart-to-heart conversation. If you can take the time, go upstairs, meet with folks, and then,
Well, I think my
and then the
neighbors
conversation.
need it, but I just thought it was important to say, so thank you for your time.
Everyone face-to-face with the planning department,
Okay,
and see what
Okay.
we can do.
there you go, neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. So we had a motion by Mr. Walsh, a second by Mr. Frank. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. 7 yeas. Other business. So Colonel Benson, let's segue to your comments so they're at least recorded and they can be put in the minutes of the meeting.
Yeah, sure. So I'd like to, if the correct pathway is to ask the town council to review, or to ask them to allow us to review, or make a recommendation to them.
My recommendation is maybe your ordinance committee review what you think you want to move forward with, have a discussion, then move it forward. Now, I will say, because so for example, quarries, it's 100 feet from the property line that you notify abutters. You will still get complaints, right? You're going to get complaints from 200 feet. Like, there is always going to be complaints of why didn't I get notice? I think we just need to identify something that the planning board and the council think is, or identifies as fair, and then utilize that. But will the complaints go away? I don't think so. There'll just be different ones. But so whatever the board or the council identifies, staff would be happy to do. There may be a little bit of increased cost, but it should be pretty minimal, depending on how far of a set identification for abutters you identify. So.
I mean, it might be simple, stick a compass point and draw a radius.
Lots of easy ways.
Yeah, different ways, sure. Yeah. But I think it's a valid point. Perhaps the ordinance committee can review what's existing and then make some recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just one person, so the other people need to be willing to do it.
Great
so.
idea.
Sure. Ms. Nichols, please.
Well, I just wanted to comment that aside from notifying individually the abutters, isn't there public notification of all construction that's going on? And so we should,
And comments of this meeting were always posted outside. And it's on the website for the people that are
but
technically
that's
savvy.
of just the planning board. Are there other, or you could go to the planning department probably and see a list of any kind of projects that are coming in to kind of.
I can share the element because how do you know even where to look without knowing? I mean, or what's a question to ask? You don't, I mean, so I share the element. But as a gentleman said at another project review who attended the meeting, he said, and I quote, paraphrase, "You people have these secret meetings," yet the gentleman knew to come here to tell us, so it wasn't too secret. I understand his point. He's, he's,
You have to be on
But-
top of it.
I've said enough.
Great, so if we could get that on the agenda for ordinance committee, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we could look to have a workshop for the ordinance committee before the next meeting?
Great.
Or do you want to have it before then? It's
No,
up to you.
it's fine. There's no. And then the comment on an update on the traffic, DOT review of the traffic situation on 25.
Yeah. Having sat through a number of meetings and workshops with the DOT commissioner, so DOT is looking to get level of service on arterial collector roads to a D or a C because they don't have the funding to maintain the roads that they have. So in order for Ospey Trail or these roads to identify a middle turn lane, it would need to be significant. Other than small improvements, like if you have enough trips to trip a center turn lane like the gas station, those are minimal extension of improvements. You can identify and stretch them a little bit, but for smaller projects, it's significantly hard to have a requirement to do those extensions. Now, my guess is at some point, there's going to be a high crash location. My guess is Ospey Trail probably is pretty close, certain locations of it, to that. Dow Road is one of them. We heard about that. If you remember, someone was killed, I think, turning in or off of Dow Road on a head-on-head collision. So Ospey Trail does see a number of accidents because of speed, but it's not to the point where the DOT has moved forward with any widening or anything like that. But that's what would be required to do any substantial improvements to 25. So Chuck wrote down the ADT for Ospey Trail is 11,400 trips a day. So it's significant traffic, just like County Road and some of South Gorham is. So it's just, unfortunately, Gorham is a pass-through community, and we see a number of trips coming from west to east, and it will continue to do that. We are trying to mitigate it and trying to get traffic off of local roads onto collector roads, but it's, if you have seen the news, an uphill battle, so.
Is that good? We gave them enough homework?
Yep.
And the ordinance committee will perhaps schedule some time?
Yep, next planning board meeting's on December 2nd.
Very good. Anyone else? Any other business to come before us?
Oh, just one brief thing. The schedule for 2025, we shared a draft last meeting, didn't hear any requests to make any changes to it, so we can share that out as a finalized schedule for 2025.
I just thought it was given to us and that's it.
We were looking
You
for
wanted
input,
comments?
but we didn't, yes, but, if there's.
Too late now.
There didn't appear to be any issues with any of the dates or conflicts, so we can move forward with finalizing that.
Very good.
posting it.
Very good. Anyone else?
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Nothing else? My thanks to the planning department, my thanks to the planning board itself for all the work that we're doing on this thing, and thanks to the public for attending. We're ready to roll? I want to see Cooper.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you so very much. Have a great evening.
8:25 standard time.